Friedberg, Germany, 1958. Private Elvis Presley befriended a homesick 19-year-old soldier named Billy Harris, gave him money for stamps, and promised, "I won't forget you." 15 years later, during a Vegas concert, Elvis stopped mid-song when he saw a one-legged veteran in the front row. Their eyes met. Elvis walked off stage, and what happened next was caught on camera, proving the king never forgot the soldiers he served with. Germany, 1958. The boy from Kentucky. William Billy Harris was 19 years old and had never been more than 50 miles from his hometown of Hazard, Kentucky. Now he was 4,000 miles from home, standing in the freezing rain at Ray Barracks in Friedberg, West Germany, wearing an ill-fitting U.S. Army uniform and trying not to cry. It was October 1958. Billy had been drafted 3 months earlier. Basic training at Fort Knox had been hell, drill sergeants screaming, physical exhaustion, homesickness that felt like drowning. But at least Fort Knox was still in Kentucky. At least he could occasionally call home from a payphone if he scrounged together enough change. Germany was different. Germany was another world. Cold, gray, foreign. Nobody spoke English except the American soldiers. The food was strange. The buildings looked like something from a history book. And Billy was terrified. Billy came from poverty that most people couldn't imagine. His father was a coal miner who died of black lung when Billy was 14. His mother worked as a cleaning lady, raising Billy and his 3 younger sisters on wages that barely covered rent. They lived in a 2-room house with no indoor plumbing. Billy had dropped out of school at 16 to work in the mines himself, trying to help support his family. When his draft notice came, his mother had cried for 2 days. Not because she didn't want him to serve, she was proud, but because the $78 a month private salary he'd be sending home was all that stood between the family and starvation. Billy sent every penny he could back to Kentucky, which meant he had nothing left for himself. No money for cigarettes, for a beer at the enlisted men's club, for stamps to write letters home. Other soldiers would go into town on weekend passes. Billy stayed on base because he couldn't afford the bus fare. He was lonely, homesick, scared, and trying desperately not to show it because showing weakness in the Army got you eaten alive. That's when he met Elvis, the private who used to be a king. Elvis Aaron Presley had been the biggest star in the world. In 1956 and 1957, he'd sold millions of records, appeared on national television, caused riots wherever he performed. Teenage girls screamed his name. Parents called him dangerous. He was 22 years old and owned the world. Then in December 1957, Elvis received his draft notice. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, begged him to join Special Services, do performances for the troops, stay stateside, maintain his image. Elvis refused. "I want to serve like any other man," he said. On March 24, 1958, Elvis Presley became U.S. Army Private 533-10761. He went through basic training like everyone else, got yelled at by drill sergeants, slept in barracks, ate mess hall food, and in October 1958, he shipped out to Germany with the 1st Medium Tank Battalion, 32nd Armor Regiment. Elvis could have lived off base in luxury. His sergeant offered special treatment. Elvis turned it down. He lived in the barracks with the other enlisted men. He pulled KP duty. He drove trucks. He did everything a regular soldier did. But Elvis wasn't a regular soldier. No matter how much he tried to blend in, he was Elvis Presley. Other soldiers wanted autographs, wanted to be seen with him, wanted to use his fame for their own benefit. Elvis was friendly but guarded. He'd been burned too many times by people who pretended to be friends but really just wanted something. So when Elvis first saw Billy Harris sitting alone in the corner of the mess hall, looking lost and scared and trying not to cry, Elvis saw something he recognized, genuine need. Billy is breaking down, but Elvis does something nobody expected. It was a Sunday afternoon in November 1958. Most of the unit had weekend passes and had gone into Frankfurt. Billy sat in the empty barracks, staring at a piece of paper, a letter from his mother. The letter said his youngest sister Caroline was sick, pneumonia. She needed medicine the family couldn't afford. His mother was trying to be strong in the letter, trying not to worry Billy, but he could read between the lines. Caroline might die. Billy needed to send money home, but he'd already sent his entire paycheck. He had literally nothing. Elvis walked into the barracks and saw Billy crying, holding the letter. Most people would have looked away, given Billy privacy. Elvis sat down beside him. "You all right, soldier?" Billy quickly wiped his eyes, embarrassed. "Yes, sir. I'm fine. Just reading a letter from home." Elvis had been in the Army long enough to know that just reading a letter from home followed by tears meant bad news. "What's your name?" Private William Harris, sir, but everyone calls me Billy. I'm Elvis, and you don't need to call me sir. We're the same rank. Elvis smiled. Bad news from home? Billy hesitated, then the words came pouring out. His sister, the pneumonia, the money he didn't have, the guilt of being 4,000 miles away while his family suffered. Elvis listened without interrupting. When Billy finished, Elvis pulled out his wallet and handed Billy $40. Billy's eyes went wide. Sir, Elvis, I can't take your money. Yes, you can. Send it to your mama. Get your sister the medicine. But I can't pay you back. I don't want you to pay me back. I want your sister to get well. Elvis stood up. You know, what it's like being away from home when people you love are hurting. I do too. My mom is sick back in Memphis. Sometimes all we can do is help each other. The friendship nobody knew about. After that day, Elvis and Billy became quiet friends. Not the kind of friendship that got photographed or written about. The kind where they'd sit together in the mess hall, share cigarettes, even though Elvis was trying to quit. Talk about home. Billy told Elvis about Kentucky, about the coal mines and the poverty and the beauty of the mountains, about his mother's strength and his sister's laughter, and how much he missed the sound of American accents. Elvis told Billy about Memphis, about Graceland, the mansion he'd bought for his mother, about missing his music, his career, his life before the Army, about his mother Gladys, who died just 2 months earlier, August 14th, 1958, and how Elvis felt like half his soul had been ripped out. They were both in pain, both homesick, both carrying grief, and somehow, sitting together in a cold German barracks, they made each other's burden lighter. Elvis did small things for Billy that nobody else knew about. When Billy couldn't afford stamps to write home, Elvis bought them. When Billy's boots wore through and he couldn't afford replacements, Elvis quietly arranged for new ones. When other soldiers mocked Billy for being poor and uneducated, Elvis shut them down. Billy Harris is worth 10 of you idiots, Elvis said once to a soldier who'd made fun of Billy's accent. He's here serving his country same as you, and he's doing it while sending every penny home to his family. Show some respect. The mockery stopped. The promise. In the spring of 1960, Elvis's service was ending. He'd be going back to the States, back to his career, back to being Elvis Presley instead of Private Presley. Billy still had another year of service. The thought of losing his friend devastated him. Elvis was the only person in Germany who treated him like a human being instead of a charity case or a joke. The night before Elvis shipped out, they sat together outside the barracks, smoking cigarettes under the stars. I'm going to miss you, Elvis, Billy said quietly. I'm going to miss you too, Billy. When you get back to being famous, you're going to forget about guys like me, and that's okay. You got a whole life waiting for you. Elvis turned to look at Billy seriously. Billy Harris, you listen to me. I will never forget the men I served with. I will never forget you. You taught me what real courage looks like. You send every penny home to your family while other guys are blowing their pay on beer and women. You get up every day and do your duty even though you're scared and lonely. That's the real thing, Billy. That's what matters. Elvis pulled something from his pocket, a small piece of paper with an address written on it. This is my address at Graceland. When you get back to the States, you write to me. You need anything at all, you let me know. That's a promise. Billy took the paper like it was made of gold. All right, I promise. They shook hands. Then Elvis pulled Billy into a hug. Take care of yourself, soldier. You too, Elvis. The next morning, Elvis was gone. The years between, 1960 and 1973, Billy Harris finished his service and returned to Kentucky in 1961. He got a job in the coal mines, married his high school sweetheart Linda, and started a family. Life was hard but good. He never wrote to Elvis. Not because he didn't want to, but because he felt like Elvis had been right. Elvis was famous again, making movies, selling records. Billy was just a coal miner in Kentucky. What could he possibly have to say that would interest Elvis Presley? Billy kept the piece of paper with Elvis's address in his wallet, though. He'd take it out sometimes and remember Germany, remember the friendship, remember the promise. In 1968, Billy was drafted again, this time for Vietnam. Billy was 30 years old, too old for combat by most standards. But the war needed bodies, and Billy Harris was healthy and trained. He shipped out in March 1968, leaving behind Linda and their 2 young daughters. Vietnam was hell in ways Germany had never been. Germany was cold and lonely. Vietnam was hot and deadly. Billy served with the 1st Infantry Division, saw combat, watched friends die. He wrote letters home when he could, but mostly he just tried to survive each day. On October 12, 1968, Billy's unit was ambushed outside Saigon. A grenade exploded 6 feet from where Billy was standing. Shrapnel tore through his right leg, shattering bone and severing arteries. Medics said later it was a miracle he didn't bleed out before the medevac helicopter arrived. They amputated Billy's leg at a field hospital in Da Nang. Above the knee, gone. Billy was 29 years old, and half his body was missing, coming home, broken. Billy returned to Kentucky in January 1969. He came home to a wife who tried to hide her horror at his missing leg, to daughters who were scared of their father's wheelchair, to a town that didn't know what to do with broken veterans. The coal mining job was gone. You can't work in a mine with one leg. The VA gave Billy a small disability check, barely enough to survive. Linda took a job at a diner. Billy stayed home, supposedly recovering, but really just drinking and trying not to think about how his life had ended at 29. The piece of paper with Elvis's address was still in Billy's wallet. Sometimes, in his darkest moments, Billy would think about writing, about telling Elvis what happened, about asking for help, but shame stopped him. What would he say? Remember me? The poor kid from Kentucky you helped in Germany? Well, I'm even more pathetic now. Can you fix me? No, Billy couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. So he suffered in silence. The concert that changed everything. 1973, Vegas. Elvis sees someone in the front row and stops singing. August 15, 1973, Las Vegas, the Hilton International Hotel. Billy Harris hadn't planned to be there. His cousin Danny, who'd moved to Las Vegas and worked in construction, had sent Billy and Linda plane tickets and concert tickets as a gift. "You need to get out of Kentucky for a few days," Danny had written. "Come visit, see a show, remember what it's like to live." Linda had convinced Billy to go. They'd left the girls with Linda's mother and flown to Vegas. Billy's first time on a plane, first time leaving Kentucky since Vietnam. Danny had somehow gotten front row seats to Elvis's show, premium seats, the kind Billy could never afford. "My boss owed me a favor," Danny explained. Billy suspected Danny had paid for them himself, but was too proud to admit it. Billy sat in his wheelchair in the front row, wearing his only decent shirt and the small army pin Linda had given him after Vietnam. He felt self-conscious, out of place, surrounded by wealthy tourists in expensive clothes. Then the lights dimmed and Elvis walked on stage. Billy's heart stopped. It was really him. Older, heavier than in Germany, wearing a white jumpsuit covered in jewels. But it was Elvis. The same face, the same smile, the same voice that Billy had heard singing in the barracks 15 years ago. Elvis opened with C.C. Rider, the crowd going wild, then I Got a Woman, then Love Me. Billy tried to sing along, but his voice caught. Memories flooded back. Germany, the friendship, the promise. Then Elvis started an American trilogy, the medley of Dixie, Battle Hymn of the Republic, and All My Trials. The song that honored soldiers, North and South, all who'd served. Elvis was halfway through singing Glory, Glory, Hallelujah when his eyes swept across the front row and locked onto Billy. Elvis stopped singing mid-word. The band, confused, continued for a few bars before gradually stopping. The audience murmured, wondering what was happening. Elvis stood frozen, staring at the man in the wheelchair wearing an army pin. Elvis walks off stage toward the wheelchair. Security doesn't know what's happening. Elvis's hand slowly dropped the microphone to his side. His face showed shock, recognition, disbelief. "Billy?" Elvis said, his voice barely audible without the mic. "Billy Harris?" Billy's eyes filled with tears. Elvis remembered. After 15 years, after everything, Elvis remembered him. Elvis turned to his band. "Take 5. Then he stepped down from the stage, something he rarely did, and walked directly toward Billy. Security moved to intercept, but Elvis waved them off. "Let me through." 5,000 people watched in complete silence as Elvis Presley knelt down beside a wheelchair and pulled a one-legged veteran into his arms. "Billy," Elvis whispered, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "I told you I'd remember." Billy sobbed into Elvis's shoulder. "I'm sorry. I should have written. I should have—" "Shh, none of that. You're here. That's all that matters." Elvis pulled back, looking at Billy. Then he saw the missing leg, the wheelchair, the haunted look in Billy's eyes. "Vietnam?" Elvis asked quietly. Billy nodded. Elvis's face showed pain. "I'm sorry, brother. I'm so sorry." "It's okay. I made it home. A lot of guys didn't." Elvis stood up and addressed the confused, emotional audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need to tell you about this man. This is Billy Harris. In 1958, we served together in Germany. Billy was 19 years old, thousands of miles from home, scared and broke, and he still sent every penny back to his family in Kentucky. He taught me what real courage looks like. Then he went to Vietnam and gave a leg for his country." The audience erupted in applause. People were standing, crying, clapping for Billy. Elvis turned back to Billy. "You still got that address I gave you?" Billy reached into his wallet with shaking hands and pulled out the worn, folded piece of paper. 15 years old, the ink faded, but still there. Elvis smiled through his own tears. You kept it all these years. You told me to write. I didn't know what to say. You say, Elvis, I need help. That's all you ever have to say. Elvis turned to his road manager, Joe Esposito, who was standing in the wings. Joe, get Billy and his wife backstage after the show. We got some catching up to do. Elvis hugged Billy one more time, then returned to the stage. The audience was still applauding. Elvis wiped his eyes, picked up the microphone, and finished an American trilogy with more emotion than he'd ever sung it before. When he reached the final line, His Truth is Marching On, Elvis looked directly at Billy and sang it like a promise. Backstage, after the show, after the concert, Billy and Linda were escorted backstage. Elvis greeted them still in his jumpsuit, sweaty and exhausted but smiling. Linda, I presume? Elvis said, shaking her hand. Your husband was the best friend I had in Germany. You married a good man. Linda, starstruck and crying, could only nod. Elvis sat down with them for over an hour. They talked about Germany, about what happened after Elvis left, about Vietnam, about Billy's struggles since coming home. What are you doing for work now? Elvis asked. Nothing, Billy admitted. Can't mind coal with one leg. VA disability barely covers rent. Elvis was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Billy, I want to help. Not because I pity you. I don't. But because you're my brother. We served together. That bond doesn't break. Elvis arranged for several things that night. One, a monthly stipend from his personal account, enough to cover Billy's family expenses. One, a job for Linda working for Elvis's Memphis office. She could work remotely. One, a better prosthetic leg than the VA had provided. One, counseling with a therapist who specialized in veteran trauma. One, plane tickets to Memphis whenever Billy wanted to visit. You don't have to accept any of this, Elvis said, but I'm offering because I can, and because in Germany you helped me when I needed a friend. This is me returning the favor. Billy couldn't speak. He just held Elvis's hand and cried. The letter nobody saw until it was too late. Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977, 4 years after reuniting with Billy in Vegas. Billy flew to Memphis for the funeral, devastated. He'd lost his friend twice now. Once when Elvis left Germany, once when Elvis left the world. At the funeral, Priscilla Presley approached Billy. You're Billy Harris? Yes, ma'am. Elvis talked about you often. He said you were one of the realest people he'd ever known. She handed Billy an envelope. He left this for you. Instructions were that it should only be given to you if something happened to him. Billy opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter in Elvis's handwriting. Billy, if you're reading this, I'm gone. That's okay. I've had a good run. But I need you to know something. That night in Germany when I gave you money for your sister's medicine, you tried to pay me back later, remember? You saved up for 3 months and tried to give me $40. I wouldn't take it. You asked why. I didn't tell you the truth then, but I'll tell you now. My mama was sick that year, really sick, and I was thousands of miles away, couldn't be there, couldn't help her. I felt useless. When you told me about your sister, I saw a chance to do for your family what I couldn't do for mine. Your sister lived, Billy. My mama didn't. You helped me more than I ever helped you. You gave me a purpose when I felt lost. You reminded me what mattered. I hope life's been good to you. I hope you found peace after Vietnam. I hope you know that every time I sang an American trilogy, I thought of you. You're a good man, Billy Harris. Better than me, better than most. Take care of Linda and those girls. Live well. That's all any of us can do. Your friend always, Elvis. 40 years later at Billy's funeral, they find Elvis's letter. Billy Harris died in 2015 at age 75. He'd lived 42 years longer than the doctors predicted after Vietnam. He'd watched his daughters grow up, graduate college, give him grandchildren. He'd stayed married to Linda for 54 years, and every day of those 42 years, Billy carried Elvis's letter in his wallet, right next to the faded piece of paper with Graceland's address. At Billy's funeral, his daughter Amy shared the story of her father and Elvis. She read Elvis's letter aloud to the congregation. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. My father never thought of himself as special, Amy said. He was just a coal miner from Kentucky who did his duty. But Elvis saw something in him that the rest of the world missed. Elvis saw his heart, and because of that, my father's last 40 years were filled with dignity, purpose, and peace. That's what real friendship looks like. That's what my father taught me. The footage of Elvis hugging Billy at that 1973 concert had become legendary among Elvis fans. It's been viewed millions of times online, shared in veteran support groups, shown in documentaries about Elvis's character. But the letter, that remained private until Billy's death, When Amy finally shared it publicly, it added a dimension to the story nobody had known. Elvis hadn't just helped Billy. Billy had helped Elvis. Have you ever had a friend who saw your worth when nobody else did? Someone who helped you not out of pity but out of genuine respect? Share their name in the comments. Those friendships save lives. Germany, 1958. A scared 19-year-old kid from Kentucky met a famous soldier who treated him like a brother. They made a promise to remember each other. 15 years later, at a Las Vegas concert, Elvis proved he'd kept that promise. But this story isn't about Elvis's generosity. It's about what real friendship looks like when nobody's watching. Elvis didn't help Billy for publicity. He helped him in private, in a German barracks where nobody would ever know. The promise wasn't for cameras. It was real. And when they reunited in Vegas, Elvis didn't just throw money at Billy. He gave him dignity. He told 5,000 people that Billy was a hero. He made Billy feel seen, valued, remembered. That's what people who've been forgotten need most. Not charity, not pity, recognition, respect. Someone saying, I remember you, you matter. How many Billy Harrises are out there right now? Veterans struggling with injuries, poverty, trauma, feeling invisible and forgotten? And how many of us walk past them thinking someone else will help? Elvis didn't walk past. In Germany, he stopped. In Vegas, he stopped. He saw Billy, really saw him, and he acted. That's the lesson. Not that we need Elvis's money or fame. We need his willingness to see people, to remember them, to keep promises even when it's been 15 years. Billy kept that piece of paper with Elvis's address for 15 years. He never used it because he thought he didn't deserve help, thought Elvis had moved on, thought he'd be a burden. But Elvis was waiting, always waiting for Billy to reach out. And when they finally reconnected, Elvis didn't say, where have you been? He said, I told you I'd remember. That's grace. That's friendship. That's what we all need to be for each other. Is there a Billy Harris in your life? Someone you served with, worked with, grew up with? Someone who's struggling now and too proud to ask for help? Will you reach out today? Share in the comments. Sometimes we have to be the one who remembers first. Subscribe to Elvis Presley Legacy Stories to discover more moments. Proving true friendship means keeping promises nobody's watching you keep. Share this story with a veteran, with someone who feels forgotten. Remind them that the people who matter never really forget. And if you're the Billy in this story, if you're struggling and afraid to reach out, hear this. The people who love you are waiting. They remember. You're not a burden. You're a brother. You're a sister. You matter. Elvis told Billy, you say, Elvis, I need help. That's all you ever have to say. That's all any of us ever have to say to the people who truly love us. Reach out, ask for help, keep the promises, remember each other. Because that's what saved Billy Harris. That's what saved Elvis too, and that's what can save us all.